Selene had never liked the city. It was too loud, too quick to swallow peace. So when she found the small cottage by the coast, she thought she had finally escaped the noise. The waves became her comfort, the sea breeze her peace. Her days passed quietly until the night she heard the cries of a dog near the tide. She ran out barefoot into the cold sand and saw the animal struggling against the water. Without thinking, she went in and pulled it out. It was a large black dog, trembling, its paw bleeding. She carried it to the shore, wrapping it in her coat. That was when she saw him. A man stood on the rocks above, watching. He had a stillness that made her freeze. His voice was low and sharp when he spoke. "You shouldn't touch what's mine." Selene frowned, still holding the dog. He was drowning. The man walked closer. The wind caught his hair, dark and wet from the mist. He looked at her like she was something unexpected, something he hadn't planned to see. "I told my staff to find him," he said flatly. "Not you. Then your staff should have been faster." She turned away, brushing the sand from her legs. That was the first time anyone had walked away from Kael Arden without waiting for his permission. He said nothing, only whistled softly. The dog limped toward him, tail low, but before leaving it turned back once as if to thank her. The next morning, Selene saw him again at the village market. He was impossible to ignore. Tall, distant, the kind of man who drew quiet wherever he stood. People greeted him with caution, and he responded with a nod that carried weight. When his eyes met hers, she felt something strange, not fear but awareness. He approached her stall where she was buying herbs. "You live near the cliffs," he said simply. She hesitated. "Yes." "You shouldn't." "Why?" "The storms there are violent. They don't warn before taking what they want." She almost smiled. "I can handle storms." He studied her for a moment as if trying to read her strength, then left without another word. That night the sea turned wild. The rain hit hard and the wind tore at her cottage roof until it split open. Water poured in, soaking her small bed and the few things she owned. She tried to hold the roof together, but it was no use. By dawn she was standing outside in the cold, holding what she could save. A blanket, her herbs, a few clothes. She looked toward the only other house in sight, a large mansion standing firm on the cliffs. She didn't want to go there, but she had no choice. When the door opened, Kael was standing there. He didn't look surprised to see her. "The storm took your roof," he said as if he'd been expecting it. "Yes," she admitted. "I just need shelter for a night." His eyes moved from her soaked clothes to the trembling in her hands. "You can stay. But my home has rules." She raised her chin. "And those are? You have to be quiet with your moment around. I hate noise." She didn't answer. He just walked in. The mansion was quiet, not grand in a showy way but cold. The walls were lined with old books and paintings. He led her to a room near the fire and handed her a towel. She dried her hair and sat down, trying to warm herself. While the flames flickered, her eyes caught something on the wall. Sketches. They were beautiful, drawn in charcoal, showing the cliffs, the sea, the small cottage she had rented, and her. In one of them she was sitting by the rocks, staring at the water. Her breath caught. "You drew these?" Kael stood behind her, his voice calm. "Yes." He turned to him. "You were watching me." He didn't deny it. "You live where no one should. I wanted to understand why you stayed." "That doesn't give you a reason to sketch me." He looked at her, unbothered. "I draw what I can't stop thinking about." For a moment the silence between them felt heavy, filled with something unspoken. Then he stepped back, his voice cold again. "You'll have breakfast in the morning. My staff will find you a new place soon." But that night, as she lay in the unfamiliar room, she couldn't stop thinking about his tone. Not the words, but what he didn't say. And in the room down the hall, Kael couldn't sleep either. He sat by the window, staring at the same sea she loved, wondering why the woman he tried to ignore had already begun to unsettle the calm he had built around his loneliness. Selene stayed longer than planned. The rain hadn't stopped for 2 more days, and every hour the sea grew rougher. Kael barely spoke to her except when necessary. He was a man of few words, but every word seemed to have a weight that pressed on his shoulder. She spent most of her time by the fireplace, reading or getting warm up. Sometimes she caught him walking past, quiet but watchful, like a storm that never fully ended. When the weather cleared, she decided to help around the house to repay him for the stay. She cleaned the library, cooked simple meals, and watered the plants no one seemed to care about. Kael didn't stop her. He only observed. One morning she noticed him standing by the balcony facing the ocean. He looked different there. Less like the untouchable man people feared and more like someone who was simply tired. "You paint the sea a lot," she said softly from behind him. He didn't turn around. "It's the only thing that listens without arguing." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it listens because it knows you don't talk much." That made him turn to her, his eyes sharp but not angry. "You're not afraid of me, are you?" "Should I be?" she asked. He walked closer, slow and deliberate. "Everyone is." "Then maybe they only know the side you show them." For a moment something changed in his expression. Not softness but confusion, as if he wasn't used to being seen that way. He looked away first. "You talk too much," he muttered. Later that day she found more of his drawings. Not just the sea or cliffs, but moments that had actually happened. Her hanging clothes to dry, reading by the window, feeding the dog she had rescued. "Why do you draw me?" she asked that evening. Kael paused before answering. "Because you bring quiet to the noise in my head." She didn't know what to say. There was pain behind those words, something deep she couldn't touch yet. That night a small accident broke the fragile calm. While washing dishes she cut her hand on a broken glass. It wasn't deep but blood ran quickly down her wrist. Kael was there before she could even move. He took her hand without a word, wrapping it in a towel. His grip was firm, protective, almost possessive. His jaw tightened when he saw the blood. "You should have been more careful," he said quietly. "It's just a cut." "It's not just anything," he said sharply. Then his tone softened. "You shouldn't bleed in this house." The way he said it sounded strange, not commanding but almost afraid. When his eyes met hers she saw something break through his control for a second. Fear, guilt, or maybe both. Their hands were still joined when he looked up at her. The air between them felt heavy. "You shouldn't care this much," she whispered. "I don't," he replied, but his voice betrayed him. He let go first, stepping back, his breathing uneven. "Get some rest." But that night she couldn't sleep. She dreamt of water again, cold, endless water pulling her under. She gasped for air and woke up trembling. Her sheets were damp with sweat, her heart racing. It took her a moment to realize she wasn't in her bed. Kael was sitting beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You were screaming," he said quietly. "You were drowning in your sleep. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I never sleep much." He looked around, they were in his room. "You brought me here?" "You wouldn't stop shaking," he said simply. She looked at him, at the faint shadows under his eyes, the tiredness he hid behind his control. "You shouldn't have," she whispered. He met her gaze steadily. "You shouldn't walk into my storms either." "But you do." The silence stretched between them again, filled with all the words they didn't know how to say. She wanted to ask why he carried so much sorrow, why his kindness always came wrapped in distance. But she didn't. She just sat there, her hands still bandaged by him, wondering what kind of man built walls that high, and what kind of love could ever break them down. Days passed quietly after that night. Selene stayed in the mansion even after the weather cleared. Something about the place, or maybe about Kael, made it hard to leave. They settled into an unspoken rhythm. She cooked breakfast, sometimes for herself, sometimes for both of them. He still worked in his study most of the day, yet she often found him outside when she was walking along the cliffs. He didn't say much, but his presence was constant, steady like the tide. One morning, Kael invited her to the stables behind the house. "You should learn to ride," he said. "It's safer if you ever wander too far." She raised a brow. "You're teaching me so I can leave faster?" He almost smiled. "So you don't get lost when you try." His rare smile caught her off guard. It wasn't perfect or practiced, it was brief and real. They spent the morning riding through the fields, the air filled with the sound of hooves and waves. He was patient with her, calmer than she'd ever seen him. For a few hours he seemed human, not the closed, distant man everyone feared. As days turned into weeks, Kael changed in quiet ways. He started joining her for tea, walking her down the garden paths, asking simple questions about her life. Sometimes he would listen without saying a word, his eyes tracing her face like he was memorizing it. But there were moments when his control cracked. He became tense whenever she spoke to the villagers. Once she came back from the market and found him waiting by the gate, his expression dark. "You were gone too long," he said. "I went to get bread, Kael. Not disappear. I saw you talking to someone. I was paying for food." He stepped closer, voice low. "I don't like strangers near you." "Then maybe you shouldn't look for me everywhere I go," she said quietly. His jaw tightened. "I can't help it." That was the first time his possessiveness scared her. Not because he shouted, he didn't, but because his need for control ran deep, like it was the only thing keeping him from breaking apart. That evening she found him outside, staring at the sea. She joined him without speaking. The air was cool, the sky fading into dusk. "You don't have to protect me," she said softly. He kept his eyes on the horizon. "You don't understand. Everything I care for gets taken from me. I can't watch that happen again." "Then stop trying to own what you fear losing." He turned to her sharply. "You think this is about ownership?" "Yes," she said, meeting his gaze. "You want to control everything so you don't get hurt. But love doesn't work like that." For the first time she saw pain flash across his face. Not anger, just hurt. He looked away, his hands clenched. "You should leave before I ruin this too." She didn't argue. She just nodded, went to her room and packed her things. When she left the next morning, the sky was gray and heavy. She walked down the rocky path toward the village, trying not to look back. But halfway there, rain began to pour. Thunder rolled and the waves crashed harder against the cliffs. She kept walking until she heard her name. "Selene." Kael's voice carried through the storm. He was soaked, his hair plastered to his face, his clothes clinging to him. He reached her, breathing hard. "Go back," she said. "You'll catch cold." He shook his head, his eyes burning. "You can't just walk away." "I have to." "You don't know how to love without caging someone." He took a step closer, his voice raw. "Because love destroyed me once. And you make me want to risk it again." The storm raged around them, wind whipping at their clothes. He reached for her hand but stopped himself halfway. She stared at him, her voice trembling. "You need to stop fighting the world that hurt you, Kael. I'm not your past." He took a slow breath, his tone breaking. "I know who you are now." "What do you mean?" "You're her sister," he said quietly. "The woman I lost, your sister. I didn't realize until last night when I saw your family name on an old letter. You came here because of her, didn't you?" Selene froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. "I didn't know you were the man she loved. I came to find peace, not to find you." They stood there, both speechless. The sea roared behind them. Kael's expression was unreadable. "So this, us, was never meant to happen." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. Maybe it was meant to heal what she couldn't. For a long time he said nothing. Then softly he whispered, "You should hate me." "I don't," she said. "But I can't stay unless you learn to let go of the man you were." He closed his eyes, his hand trembling slightly before he let it fall to his side. "Then maybe losing you will finally teach me how." They stood there until the rain eased, neither of them moving, both knowing something between them had already changed forever. The next morning the storm had passed. The air smelled of salt and wet earth. Selene stayed in the village for a few days, helping at the small inn where she rented a room. She told herself she needed the space, that she was done with Kael Arden and all the weight that came with him. But peace didn't come easily. Every time she stood by the shore she thought of him, his voice, his guarded eyes, the way he said her name like it meant something heavy. She tried to let the sea wash it away, but it didn't. One evening she found a letter slipped under her door. It had no name, no seal, just her first name written in a firm, familiar hand. Inside it said only, "There are things I never told you. If you want to know the truth, come back once more. If not, burn this and forget me." She didn't burn it. When she returned to the cliffs, Kael was waiting outside the mansion. He looked different, tired but calm. There was no command in his voice this time when he said, "Thank you for coming." "I came for answers," she said. He nodded slowly and led her through the old garden path to the far end of the property. There stood a stone archway half covered in vines. Behind it, a small memorial, weathered, untouched for years. "She's here," he said quietly. "Your sister. I kept this place because I couldn't let go." Selene felt her chest tighten. "You blamed her, didn't you?" "Yes," he admitted. "I thought she betrayed me. But I was wrong." He handed her an old letter, edges yellowed from time. She tried to save me. The night of the accident she came back to warn me about people I trusted. She died trying to protect me. Selene read the letter silently, tears stinging her eyes. Kael continued, his voice rough but steady. I built my life around anger. It was easier than facing what I lost. When I met you I thought you were punishment. But you were a reminder that there's still something left to save. She looked up at him, searching his face. You can't build love on guilt, Kael. I know, he said. That's why I'm letting you decide. If you walk away now I won't stop you. If you stay I'll spend the rest of my life learning how not to hurt what I love. Selene stepped closer. His walls, the same ones she had fought against for so long, were finally gone. His eyes were unguarded, his voice quiet, his heart open in a way she had never seen before. I never came here to hate you, she said softly. I just wanted to understand what broke her. Now I see it broke you too. Kael looked down, his throat tight. I don't deserve forgiveness. Maybe not, she said, but you deserve peace. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. They stood together, side by side, both silent. For the first time the silence wasn't heavy, it was gentle. Later that evening, back inside the mansion, Kael led her to the study where his paintings lined the walls. He uncovered one canvas covered by a cloth. It was a portrait of Selene herself. She stood by the sea, her hair lifted by the wind, her eyes calm. He spoke quietly. This is how I see you. Not as a ghost of the past. As the woman who reminded me I could still feel. Selene touched the painting gently. You've stopped painting the storm. He nodded. Because I don't live in it anymore. There was no dramatic ending, no sudden kiss, no sweeping promises. Just two people standing in the quiet, understanding that love was not about control or pain, but about finding a way to heal side by side. Before she left that night she turned at the door. So this is what taming you looks like, she said softly. Kael gave a faint smile. You didn't tame me, Selene. You just showed me I didn't have to fight everything. She smiled back, then walked toward the open air. The sea was calm now, the same sea that had witnessed their storms and silences. For once, it felt peaceful, as if it too had been waiting for this ending. And though they would both carry their pasts, they knew this. Love hadn't saved them overnight. It had simply taught them how to breathe again. Love can change even the coldest heart. Subscribe for more unforgettable love stories.